welcome to the Cave Project, a movement exploring the tension of tech and culture and life with Jenny and Greg Swan. If you're just joining us for the first time, we've covered things like your kid won't be an astronaut, don't fight them about being an influencer, making your dumb house a smart house, why are social media marketers anti-social media, Generation Alpha, death in a digital age, all sorts of fun stuff. But today, what are we talking about, Jenny Swan?
We are talking about putting our phones on Do Not Disturb. And also, we're talking about South by Southwest.
South by SXSW, South by Southwest, in Austin, Texas, is an event we've been going to for a little while.
Yeah, some of us longer than others, right? And for different reasons.
This is true.
Yeah.
We have been going down to the annual Technology, Music, and Film Conference since, I've been going down since 2007.
I went that year as well.
That's right.
Because, and I know that because as a mom, I know that I was buying 18-month-old clothes for our little dude who is now 18. So.
And for those of you who've never gone before, you might be like, I'm so sick of hearing about this, and or I don't know what it is, and or why do I care? Some of what we're going to talk about today is what our takeaways are from this really important event. We're also going to cover at the top why it's important. And then both Jenny and Greg have a very different view and got different things out of it. So we're going to talk about that today as well.
Sweet. I'm down.
So South by Southwest started more than 30 years ago as a music event.
Wait, you said 30 years ago. 30 years ago as a music event.
Yeah, it was founded in 1987, and it was, I think it was put on by the Austin Chronicle, like their alternative newspaper down there.
Fun.
And obviously the music scene in Austin is amazing. All of these local bars with local music. And in 1994, that's when South by Southwest Multimedia started. 1994, okay. But it was really in 2007, it was the year that we were there, is when it changed from a place where tech nerds are, I love nerds, right?
Yeah, we're going to use that word
where the tech nerds were like
right?
hanging out and figuring out what that meant to, oh my gosh, this is like a center of culture and where it could change a lot of things, in part because Twitter effectually launched there. So Twitter had been out for a little while, but this idea of a digital back channel happening, people on a stage talking, and then other people back here, like on their phones or at the time, like on your computer, or texting into Twitter 40404, and communicating back and forth. And I wrote at the time, oh my gosh, there's this thing called the digital back channel. What could this be? Foursquare really had a moment there where it was like people checking in and you could see where your friends were, and then you could go show up at the bar, show up where they were, and you'd go, oh my gosh, like serendipity, how did you know I'd be here? And then Meerkat launched there. The idea of like you can go live from your phone. And now, of course, today, Twitter is not what it was, but micromedia and using your phone for a digital back channel is a core thing. Foursquare exists in a different way, but of course you can check in, and all of our social apps have a geographic layer now, and everyone can go live from their phone today, right?
So, and you're saying that was the impetus for South by...
So that was really how it started becoming important to the center of where these things were.
Gotcha, because it was literally launching... It was a point of connection for all of these people to launch new points of connection, basically.
And then as those startups or those test products were happening with a culture of people who start from a place of, yes, let me try that.
Yeah.
Versus no. Also, the VCs started coming, the venture capitalists, the people to fund them, as well as the brands came too.
Yeah, and that's really the piece that I have noticed over the years as we've gotten further out from that initial 2007 is it become a place where you get funding. And so, like, if as a normal, right, like all of what you just said doesn't really translate well, right, for like a normal mom, maybe. So I think if I was going to translate that into normal human speak, like South by Southwest is kind of Austin as a whole is a creativity hub. And that creativity spans not just music and film, but it also, for marketers, for tech enthusiasts, right? It's a place where you innovate your craft as well. And so this place has become not just a place where like there's a conference and there's a bunch of, people just talking about the cool hip thing, which I think is how the media covers it, right? I think for the people who attend, and maybe I should just speak for you and I, like it's a place where innovators get told yes, right? It's a place where innovation is the front of the horse and not the back of it, right? And so you go there as a place to actually talk about the new things and talk about all the variables and talk about how does this actually impact, and not from like a binary corporate like X then Y then Z, but like if this then what can happen, what does this look like? And it's really just kind of a proving ground in kind of the same way you're talking about like Twitter launched there, all these things launched there. The reason that happens is because people aren't just interested in a dollar number on this side of it, right? And obviously, like I just said, there's the VC piece, which that happens there too, which I don't think you and I have a huge amount of insight into, but we know it's there. I think it's a place where a lot of people are insatiably curious, which I think is an important facet of innovation. Like, I think it's what drives it. It's the engine of innovation, right? And so it's a very unique sort of experience and place to hang out, where you have a bunch of people just like, what could we do? How could this work? What could it look like? Like, what can't we do, right? And there's not a lot of like, oh, we don't do that, or oh, it wouldn't be, play well with this market or whatever. It's literally like the fleshing out of the philosophy of creativity.
Absolutely.
Right?
So there's a convention center with keynote speeches and then breakout sessions. All the hotels around Austin have their own breakout sessions, and you have a badge that gets you either into just the interactive, just to some of the music showcases and music panels, just the film, like the film panels or the films themselves, or all of them.
Mm-hmm.
And South by Southwest mission is to help creative people achieve their goals.
Mm-hmm.
And so like you said, you have just a lot of creative people coming together to learn, to network, to do business, and then to grow too.
Yeah.
So, in my process, like as I've grown in my career, I have a process which a big part of this includes taking a week or a long weekend and being within this community of people who start from yes or yes and.
Mm-hmm.
Also, people that always say yes all the time, sometimes that stuff doesn't end up happening. Mm-hmm. Sometimes that stuff doesn't go so well, and
mm-hmm.
that is part of it.
Mm-hmm.
And some of that tension is important here too, and that's part of my process, where I want to try the new thing, and then also maybe that thing, like, maybe that's not so good later, or maybe that's not going to be a thing. And having gotten to see Mark Zuckerberg in a big keynote basically get booed off the stage and then reset and do a Facebook developer garage in a room about 10 times bigger than this closet, and just take questions from the audience, like getting to actually see him in action, getting to see Elon Musk very early, getting to see Jay Graber, who's the CEO of BlueSky, and she founded a Fediverse-based social network that she thinks could be the future. And like getting to hear these innovators, there's astronauts there. And of course, like a lot of Hollywood actors are increasingly there for film. And one of the things that happens, because it's not inexpensive to go, and I've been very fortunate to have employer where I've made the case, believe me, and we'll talk at the end about how to make the case for this, if this is something you want to do and you have an employer that might pay for it. But it is more accessible than going to Cannes or traveling abroad. Not that those things couldn't be important, but if you can get there and show up, you can be part of this conversation in a really accessible way.
Yeah. The exciting part about that piece is I think a lot of brands and a lot of companies are actively having those conversations while actively like doing it, right? So like these activations that are all over Austin have been a really fun point for you and I didn't get to any this year, which I did get to the Love is Blind activation, so like I shouldn't say that, but there's a lot of being able to get your hands on tech. There's a lot of being able to get your hands on the ethos of a company, right? Like there have been years where you've been able to go and sit on Roseanne's couch. There have been years where we've played with robot dogs and a Sony activation. We've been able to just really play with new technology in a way that, that accessibility piece, right? Like it's really fun to watch, like, okay, so we want you to be able to think and then do something, right? And like you and I have been watching that kind of trajectory for years kind of unfold. So like when you and I went to the Apple store and put that headset on, like for you and I both, I think in different ways, probably you more specifically, me more like big picture philosophy, was just like, this is the culmination of all these years of watching all these small startups come set up a booth, let you play with their tech. And then now I'm like moving stuff with my eyes, right? Like it's a very like concrete way to get your kind of bearings around these ideas of what technology actually does,
Totally.
Right?
Yeah, the first smart ring I ever saw was not at CES, which is the big consumer hardware show in January. It was at South by Southwest.
Right.
And now, of course, I wear one every day, all the time.
Right.
And a smartwatch, right?
Yeah.
And the thing about like that trade show, and we talked about this in a previous podcast around CES, is like, here's the hardware, go. And South by is more a discussion of like, why?
Yeah.
And how, and what if, and what about and I remember Nike launched the Fuel Band, which was their version of a fitness tracker at South by Southwest. When you talk about a brand activation, literally taking the tower that looks like a Gotham like skyscraper and projecting colored bands on it while everyone's like exercising, and you're just looking around like, oh my gosh, what's happening? Nick Cannon is DJing over here, and there's Mark Cuban is like walking around, and that kind of accessibility and hands-on excitement is fascinating. And also, none of us are wearing a Fuel Band now, but I just said like, I have a smartwatch and a ring that do all of those things. And so for people that are like, well, I'm going to wait until it's figured out, this is the place where the things are getting figured out and you can have a voice in it.
Yeah. And so for those of you who I would count you as one of the the foremost people who don't do that, right? Like, how long did we wait? Like, how many years have we been watching robot vacuums before I had an army of them in my house, right? Like, I think there's this really unique perspective of, this is awesome. This changes things fundamentally, but I also know where this is headed. And so it, like, you and I have become really specific consumers of tech because of these spaces that we hang out in, where like even now, like I really want, just as a stupid banal example, I really want a vacuum that also mops, right? But like, we have seen the tech. We know it's coming. It's not here yet. The tech is out there. It's not great yet. So like, we're going to wait, right? And so it is a really interesting manifestation of like South by, for me, is not, as you said, CES, but it's like, okay, so how the brands are telling the story of how you use the tech. And so you go to these places and they're just literally like, no, this is why you need this and this is how you do it. And it starts from a like advertising communications perspective. You're starting to get the brand story locked in a way that can sell to the consumer, right?
Absolutely.
And so as a consumer, and I'm very honest, I'm a prolific consumer, right? Like they literally, when they talk about Jason's and Jennifer's, like I am the Jennifer for real. Like that piece is really fascinating to me, and it helps what I consume just because I'm aware of what they have eked out, what they don't, what, like literally there was a hair dryer there this year, and I like didn't even wait. I'm like, we already have this tech. They're just trying to, and so like, there's this like prowess that comes from playing in these spaces and being like, oh, this is where this is going, this is where this is headed, this is what it looks like this is how it impacts me.
And also you hear a lot of hype coming out of this show, a lot of buzzword things. And I think sometimes all events, and definitely the tech industry itself and South by Southwest, can get a bad rap because it's like, you know, social media is going to change everything. And like, it did. It wasn't all good, but it wasn't all bad, but it did change things. Or one year was like, right, it was like the metaverse. And we've talked a lot about this. Like, we don't use that M word anymore, but the Generation Alpha living in Roblox and Fortnite. NFTs were a huge thing where we're like literally in activations, waiting in line to like have yourself minted or to get an NFT. No one's asking to see those anymore. And also that technology has moved into gaming and digital assets, and it exists. We just don't necessarily say those words anymore.
Yeah, it's very interesting, and I think there's a lot of ways you can lean this back into hype cycles and just kind of like the nature of what innovation is and the nature of how innovation actually moves from innovation to practicality, right? Yep. And so I think when that year that we're talking about the metaverse, like, it was on Good Morning America, and they were like, it was like, you know, that Bryant Gumbel thing that you play all the time where he's like, internet,
they're trying to figure out email addresses, and they're like, it's like a with a circle around it,
right?
Like
okay,
.com,
right? Yeah, so it's that kind of like thing that happens. You have these things jump the shark, so to speak, or like become so mainstream as an idea to come up against that like it almost, I don't know, innovation as like a innovation cycle, like how companies use them, how like all of that is an important thing that like is not in your eyes' interest to talk about, but I think all of that plays a part into how these things show up at South by, how the consumer receives them, which is literally your job, like, you know.
Yeah. And so and I did an article with Digiday about this year, when people are like, oh, like it used to be better and we haven't seen a Twitter like launch for a long time. And it's like, sure, but like you could also say the Super Bowl's overhyped and Coachella's overhyped, but like it's still the fucking Super Bowl. So there's a lot of people there. There's a lot of technology and innovation. And when people are like, I'm staying home this year, it's like, fine. There's a whole new generation who's coming up and there's room for them.
I think it's really important also in the nature of like where the country, where the world is when we walk into this conference. Like, it was really noticeable this year in a way that like I had not ever seen before. Just like how when you're kind of in a situation in the country that you live in that there's a social fabric sort of crisis happening, you know, everything, your priorities all shift and everything falls. And so innovation exists primarily on funding, and it's not a business driver always, unless you're like an Apple or, you know, like it's not the thing that drives your revenue. It's not the thing that it's sexy in the media, but it's not sexy for your accountant is what right? So like as an accountant, I'm just like, you know, the R&D, like all those budgets, like all of that stuff is getting shrunk down as we start to talk about an economy that could possibly go into a recession, into like a lot of boycotting of brands going on. Like there's a lot of dollar pinching happening right now, and no one knows that better than you, because then ad dollars go down, marketing, you know, all of that stuff starts to shrink a little bit. And I don't think we're there yet, and I don't think anyone's saying that, but I think there's a tension there right now where people are like, what are we actually doing? And what's the most important thing to do with my money right now? And how does that translate into not only like revenue, but like brand awareness, goodwill with the public? Like, I think that's a huge theme that I left with this year is like, how do we let people know we're the good guys? Right? Like that kind of ethos has been, and so all of that kind of, this conference is not removed from society in any sort of way. In fact, it's woven into it very, very profoundly, because everyone who walks into this talking about the nature of the next big thing is like, ultimately this has to be for the good of the thing, right? Yeah. So I think that was a huge thing that I walked away with this year.
Well, and I would say, you know, the in 2013 is when I participated in the Google Glass meetup at South by Southwest, where 40 of us explorers gathered, and everywhere we went, people were like, take those off. Like, we don't want that. And so that's a really good like manifestation or example of what you're talking about, where like you can be on the front end of culture in a way that you can even hear from the earliest adopters, like, not that today.
Like, I know too much about this. Yeah, and AI was really in that bucket this year.
So
like,
we're gonna talk about that for
it was
sure.
a little painful for me, honestly, but.
So full disclosure,
Yep.
I first spoke at South by Southwest in 2010 on the state of music blogs, which was fascinating to be a blogger and be on this panel with someone from Sony EMI Records and someone who worked with baby bands, and we're talking, and someone stood up in the middle of our panel and interrupted us, and they said, bloggers aren't real journalists, and you guys need to write more negative reviews to tell bands that they suck so they will stop making music.
Oh my god.
And we're like, what is this? Like, the future of criticism is like on full display, and there's a whole Bob Lefsetz thing.
Yeah.
And then I was invited to join the advisory board, where you are actually helping curate the sessions each year. So this was my 10th year curating sessions. So I'm reviewing more than 200 submissions. I spend a lot of time outside of this couple weeks.
Our whole family, like, we create a schedule around dad grading panels.
I'm judging Shorty Awards right now.
And it's the same thing.
And it's kind of, I take it really seriously because a lot of people put a lot of effort in this. And then when people show up and they're like, well, that panel sucked. Like, well, that's someone fucked up. And so I take it really personally. So I've been on the advisory board for 10 years, and then this is the second year as a South by Southwest mentor, which means a ton to me, getting asked to do that, where I'm meeting with people that they're literally here because creativity is part of their job, and they want to be able to meet with people. So
let's just be honest. Like, this place means a lot to you personally. It means a lot to you professionally, right? And the ethos of the place is kind of you're an evangelist sort of for this conference. And like, we met someone today who was like, oh my god, or not today, at South by, who was like, oh my god, it's the Prince of South by Southwest.
I'm not
Which
accepting.
You hate that, but it was so, like, I literally like,
the Prince of South by, I'm just like, this seriously.
That's
all right,
not
anyway.
great in today's political climate. Like,
I know. So,
but the idea is, like, this is a place, it's a big conference with a lot of information, and it's really, really terrifying it's really terrifying for a lot of people to navigate, right? It's just like, it's a big outlet of cash. It's a big thing. And it feels a lot like Disney World to me. Like, I kept saying that this time, like, where some people go and they're just able to mine all the good out of it and have a great time. And some people get really stressed about all of this stuff. And so you've been really a point for a lot of people in your career trajectory. You've been someone who's, like, really not only mentored at South by, but, like, helped a lot of people understand how to go and really get all of the good that you can get out of this place, including me. And so it has, in my opinion, like, it just keeps getting better. And, like, you have innovated how you talk to people about it over the years too. And it's been a fun evolution to watch as your person, like, as you continue to grow and change, and then continue to help your clients and help your people just really, get all of the good out of this wonderful place.
Because it's fun, but it is work. It is, you get up and you, like, go get in line and you go to a session, and then you meet people in line, you meet people in sessions, and if the session sucks, you get up and walk to a different one. And then you're going to activations, and you got to be open for, like, that beautiful serendipity that, especially post-pandemic, I think is hard for a lot of us to be, like, free-flowing, because, like, well, what if you meet someone cool, or what if something happens? So what we've done is build some structure, like stranger dinners, where we have open dinner reservations for 8 to 10 people on a handful of nights. So as you meet people in line, or you meet people in a session, or, you get a DM from someone and they're like, would love to meet with you, and you're like, well, come to dinner. And then what's so fun is, like, you've gone to different sessions and activations than this person, than you and me, etc., and we can all share. And then you're hearing their interpretation, and they're going to tell you the 3 best things they heard in a session, you didn't have to go to that session. You just got the 3 best things. And then also, you can go back and listen. A lot of them are saved as audio. And so I have a whole list. I'm going to go back. A lot of the keynotes are saved on YouTube, which is huge. And for me, I always do a really big synthesis of like, here's what I heard, here's what I thought, share that with clients. This year we had, my agency had 2 stages. It had a stage during the education time and a health stage. We had a client do an influencer dinner. We had another client do an entire branded activation house. We had speakers. I helped coordinate a panel this year. And so, again, full disclosure, like we're in on this. And also we came back with some takeaways that we wanted to share today.
Yeah.
And so you had a handful that I wrote down.
You did?
Yeah, because I'm sure you don't have them off the top of your head.
But I can pull them. Like,
so,
we're just very different creatures about this.
Obviously, AI is the word du jour right now.
Well, and it has, to be clear, it has been for like 5 years now.
Because AI is also not new.
No, well, 17 years is what one of the PhD scientists in a panel, to be clear. Like, this is not just like, Mark Zuckerberg's cousin, 20-year-old guy. Like, this is a scientist who is like churning data. Like, he's not messing around. He's like, been doing this for 17 years. AI.
So, and the conversation this year is shifting more towards agentic AI, or AI that can act autonomously on your behalf.
Yeah, see, and you're very focused on that. I'm not.
Well,
so like you can use, but like that's not my talking point, just to be clear.
And yet, there's a lot of education needed around the basics.
I think that this is where I get really irritated. So everyone's watching me be like, oh, like I get really... AI, I think, as I went this year, let's start with me. So I went this year, my goal that I did not share with you because relationship dynamics, but I did not share with you what my goal was, but my goal was to leave this conference understanding what AI is right now, where AI is going, and what AI is actually capable of. Because I have a thing built into my DNA where if anyone's telling me something about something, I'm like, you're wrong. Like, that can't actually be what's happening. And as AI has come down the pike and just picked up steam, you guys have heard me talk about it on this podcast. Like, I have rejected the whole premise. I'm just like, when everyone is churning, that's when I get really quiet and stop. I'm just like, I need to watch everyone before I like delve into this and like make any decisions right. But what happened this year is I got further into my second undergrad of accounting, and I'm doing it all asynchronously online, which means I don't have a teacher to I do via email, to be clear, but I don't have the kind of student teacher thing happening that like a traditional learning model would have. And you kept going, you should ask ChatGPT. Like, and then you do this thing because you know me, and you're like, you're not telling me how to do it because if you tell me that I need to do that, it's never going to happen.
Bad news bears.
But you're just like, this one time I didn't know this thing, and so I did it this way. And I was like, and you said it enough that I finally one day opened up ChatGPT, and it like broke my brain. Like how much I was able to tell ChatGPT what I needed to know in the way I needed to know it so that I could parse out what I needed to apply the concept, right? And me and my little ChatGPT friend like have really, really been able to teach me this really technical skill that I have a lot of knowledge around, but that I also have a neurodivergent brain. And so the traditional modes of teaching me a thing aren't the way that I learn. So literally, I need the answer so I can work backwards. That's how my brain works. So if you tell me what the answer is and then tell me how you got there, I will learn it immediately. And so I can pick up and go. That's not how the book teaches you, right? It teaches you front to back. I need to go back to front. And so I just like went in to this year going, okay, how is this so bad? Like literally I'm like watching, and we hang out with a lot of technologically forward people, right? And I work in a very traditional career as well. And so the dichotomy of these two things are always very interesting to me. But everyone has been using it in all these wonderful ways. And so my goal going in this year was like, okay, where are we at? Where are we going? What's the, So I was very disappointed, to be honest. And I talked to you about this like ad nauseum.
In a couple of the panels, you were disappointed.
I was very disappointed on the front kind of side of this, where I was going to AI panels on purpose. And I was listening to people talk about, all these things, and everyone was just very, very negative.
Yeah.
And that has not been my experience at South by.
Yeah.
And so I had to do like a vibe pivot, right? Where I was just like, okay, so you have found these panels that are very like bullish on the negativity of this. So where are the panels on the positivity? And I found one, and it wasn't even that it was positive. It just was net neutral, right? So I went to this panel where they explained, large language model AI, how it works, how it's running, how things are, working right now. And then they talked to two, other people who were talking about like the two future, models that they're working on that are not large language models. Which when you're talking about agentic AI, you're still talking about the version we have right now. You're talking about large language models. And like this was talking about a different kind of perception of that, which is why I'm getting really irritated, because I think this conversation so much gets lost in translation. And so and you've heard us argue about it on this podcast, where you're like, it's narrow and like, what the fuck does that mean?
Yeah.
And so I think, as so often happens in human history, you have a kind of the case of the have and the have-nots, and then the have-nots get really pissed off. And I historically have been a part of the haves-nots more than I have the haves. And so like, you are going to sit down and you're going to explain to me what you're saying and why you're saying it, so that I understand, because I think a lot of the general public, and even some of the people in these panels building the things and playing with the AI, like, don't fully understand it. And I have to be like direct with you right now. Like, I have been really frustrated with some people that we hang out with, where like they're being like sort of like poo-pooing me about my questions, and then they don't know the answers.
Sure. Yeah.
And so the reality of this becomes, when you have a case of the have and have nots, you have people kind of gatekeeping information. And then when they understand that they don't know the answer to your question, instead of like saying, I don't know, I don't understand, I hadn't gotten that far yet, they get pissed off defensive. And mean.
Yeah.
And so it just becomes this thing where, and honestly, this is a male-dominated thing. So you have a lot of dudes, a lot of white dudes, and a lot of not white dudes with privilege, like being like, oh, well, aren't you an idiot? And it's like, am I? I don't think so. I think you are. And I think I hit the limit of your knowledge, instead of being like, here's a resource. Like, that's not where I'm hanging out, but this guy knows. Like, you should go talk to this guy. Like, there's no sharing of this, like, technology in a equity-based sort of way, right?
Can I share an example?
Yes.
So I went to a panel called Enough with the Delving, Staying Human in the Age of AI, and it's a nod towards the fact that the word delve. No, delve.
Oh.
So the word delve was basically not used at all.
Yeah.
And then it has been introduced with AI, and we're using it all the time. Also, did you know you used it like 5 minutes ago?
No, I had no idea.
And so this is fascinating, because this is like an Abraham Piper TikTok, actually. Because it'd be like, well, AI has pulled this word that we know up to the surface.
Yeah.
And now we're using it more. But just because you use it doesn't mean you used AI. Like, you, Jenny Swan, just used it talking. And so it's more top of mind.
Yeah.
And I was really disappointed in the panel's attitude from the very start. It was so like, oh, this isn't good, and like, we have to stay human, and it causes cognitive. There's been a study that causes cognitive decline, which, by the way, I already
We've debunked
debunked
that
it,
so many times.
which
It's such a terrible
It's
study.
this Microsoft study that found that AI makes human cognition, quote, atrophied and unprepared. But I used my cognitive brain to go read the study, and it's all self-reported perception of, which also assumes like that effort equals critical thinking. So terrible
and
study.
to be fair, like there is a whole discussion about that study alone and like what words mean and like all of that, but like not
and so
today.
you know, and they're just like, well, people chatting with AI have been led to like die by suicide, and it's like, yes, there was a case of that in Belgium, and I'm sure that there are other really regrettable ones also.
Also, that's important, and that like you're like bastardizing the importance of it by like labeling it as this like one-off
and again
thing.
Causational versus
causation versus correlation and all of that.
And so I went into the Slido chat question thing, and I was like, so it's gonna be here,
right?
So what do you guys recommend?
Right.
And then I might have used a couple different browsers to upvote it, to using my brain, not AI, to like make sure it got the attention of the moderator.
Mm-hmm.
And they answered it and finally shifted to start to talk about like, how should organizations start their AI journey? What could you, and I was like, all right, here we go. Now we're actually on the fucking topic of staying human in the age of AI, not being like, fuck you, AI, I'm sick of it.
Yeah.
Like, I don't like the change. Ew. Or how about it's changing? What should we do?
Yeah, I think I found that too, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, and you and I talked about panels that I'm not going to talk about specifically because I do not want to give those people any more air. Like, I think and sitting with you and other people who are voting for panels, like there is the presentation of a thing and then there's the acting out of the thing, right? And I think the vibe of South by really this year was like, oh shit, it's here. Now what? Right?
I know.
And it was very like, I think as I've thought about it over the last, however long since we've been home, there is a huge thing in human like proclivity where you're like, oh, I really wanted this thing. It doesn't look like how I thought it would look.
Mm-hmm.
And also all of this really like hard societal things are happening. And this is a manifestation of that and this. And like, it's all bad. And it's like, oh, no. Like, hold up. Yes, bad. Yes, bad. Yes, bad. That doesn't mean it stays this way. Mm-hmm. So we have to innovate here, right? Like we have to say, okay, this is here. We do not like this. We don't like that. Like we can buy a book off Amazon and it says Hulu instead of Hulu. Mm-hmm. Like we don't like this. So how do we innovate here? Yes. Right? Like how do we change the trajectory of this? Like what's so much of human history, like even Amy Webb talked about like, Herman Kahn and like, okay, so Amy Webb's whole thing is like, she does her job because of Herman Kahn trying to like give a futurist perspective on what would happen in the face of like a nuclear annihilation, right? And her story predicates around this idea that like you have to help people understand, right? And so her job is to help people understand what's coming. And there's a whole nother piece of that like
she's a
I'll talk about later. But
who gives an annual tech trend report.
She does, yes, and she's like the best at that.
And we'll link to that in the show notes.
For sure. She's awesome at it. But like her, missive that like you have to talk to people about the thing and you have to explain to people what's happening and you have to like give them the information is just the first part of the story,
it's just part
right?
Of the first step.
Your storytelling. That's what she says about this.
So that's what you were looking for in AI, and you found a panel that did that.
Yes. That not only explained how it works, but said like, I will never ever forget this very storied, credentialed scientist saying, what if I was able to put 1 million Harvard PhD level scientists in a room cranking on cancer? Like,
excuse me.
like, then what? Then what are we talking about? Then what are
What do
we
you
talking
mean?
about? Like, are we talking about how they're gonna eat our faces? You know, AI is gonna eat our faces off and kill us while we sleep? Or are we talking about like the good of the tech, right?
Like what? Like what could they do?
They'll solve cancer,
Mm-hmm.
right? They'll find a cure
Yeah.
because there's a million of them agentically looking all at one problem, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you've given them the information they need. They're not pulling from a large language model, like all of that stuff. Like they're looking at this thing with this information.
Yeah.
They're using, anyway, that's deeper. But like, that is the good of this thing. So are we going to talk about that too? And I don't think it was like we only focus on the good. That's not the narrative he was telling. He was just like, if you talk about like the data churning and the environmental impacts and you talk about all these negative things, like we also have to talk about the good so that we can actually make an analysis, because I think what is starting to happen is we're not making any sort of analysis, we're just determining, which are two very different things.
Absolutely.
So
I went to a number of sessions on the future and on trends, including the MIT Tech Review's annual 10 trends that are going to change the world this year, Rohit Bhargava's non-obvious trends, and a number of others. And I think that my takeaways from CES this year, I was so down about robots. I'm just like, why are we still talking about Roombas 20 years later after I'm sick of just all of our helper robots. All they fucking do is like vacuum, and maybe they're going to mop well.
But not yet.
And so what's fascinating is what those futurists are signaling right now is that because of generative AI, the ability for helper robots to come into our homes because of generative AI and spatial data and 3D mapping and the faster to train, we're actually closer to robot butlers than we've ever been. And this Rosie the Robot idea I was so bummed about in January. You have the philosophy side in March saying probably by 2030. And so that's pretty fast. That's like 5 years. And the fact that Waymo introduced robot taxis this year at South by Southwest in Austin is a big deal, because it took them years and years and years to train them on the streets of San Francisco, to train them so they have to learn all the streets and all the things. Now they can take all those databases in a small language model and train the system for a new city without having to drive every square mile. And so the same thing at your house, where like it took a long time to have a robot know like where the bathroom is and where the door is and stuff. Those maps will be able to translate. Or a robot that is really good at flipping pancakes, you can't just be like, now flip burgers. Like, it doesn't know how to translate.
Yeah, so can we break that down a little bit? Because I think it's important. So you're saying, when I'm talking about a large language model versus when you're talking about a small language model, I think those two distinctions are important to like spell out. So
totally,
a large language model is basically like mining the internet, would you say?
It has had billions or even like trillions of parameters of everything we know trained on it so that it can access all of those things when it needs it. So, and the creative manifestation of that is like write a poem about blank, and it knows what blank is and it knows what a poem is, etc. Right? So a small language model like your home robot probably doesn't need to know every Disney script that's ever been written. Your Waymo car doesn't have to have access to every Aerosmith lyric ever written before. It just needs to know how to like drive the fucking car. And that doesn't mean that it couldn't access a large language model to do, like if it needed that, it could go find it, but it doesn't have to have that on board. So it reduces, it's a reduction of, and then also because you're reducing the data, you've now reduced the environmental impact and the time, which is really great because we don't have to put everything that we've ever documented ever in everything. And that's a really big shift right now that is actually not new. It's just a shift of people saying, oh, I don't have to take everything and put it into everything.
So just for like the super nerdy spot here. So large language models are mining text, right?
Yes, or mining video and images and then converting them to text.
Right. And they're self-learning this stuff. So they're basically, what they're doing is they're like looking at all of this data, and then they're predicting, they're using linear regressions to predict the next thing, and then you're telling it yes or no, and then it keeps going.
Okay.
Right? Does that sound right?
Yeah.
Okay. So when you're doing that on a smaller data set, they can go faster.
Yeah,
basically.
Think of it as like you're going to the library to look some things up, and you have literally an army of librarians who can hit every single book in the whole place. And a small language model is a bookshelf where you've curated these 15 books.
Right. So this is a very different thing. Like, you're making predictions. The AI is making predictions based off text data, and it's just able to go very fast because of the data sets that it has access or doesn't have access to. And it's able to predict. So it's not making determinations based on like a set of consciousness, or it's all data driven, it's all math focused, it's all linear regressions and like guessing patterns, right?
Yeah, I would say, think about like if you are a lawyer and you're using a small language model to help you like run your law firm. Again, that language model does not need to be trained on every all of the instruction manuals for every Chevy car ever made.
Yeah, and I think you and I are talking about different things right now, which is the thing that happens in this conversation and the way it gets frustrating for a normal versus a guy that's like using it for a brand purpose, right? So yeah, that law firm needs to know that. You know what I'm concerned about? Why does it know that, and how does it know that? And that's the disconnect, I feel like, between the normal and like the companies like shoving AI down people's throat right now, which I think is like the thing that I heard. I'm going to today's panel. It's like, they're telling us we need AI and we don't need it. And it's like, I don't disagree that. Okay, so I disagree that we don't need it. Like, I think we need it, right? Like, but I also disagree with like the way that it's getting handed to the public and how they're not explaining what it is and why, right? So that's why I'm asking those questions, is because I think like in real time, people think that AI can like read your brains. Like Amy Webb said, they think that you're going to go to sleep and then the robots are going to kill you. Like, that's what they she said that in a panel this week. So I just,
well, when actually so if you actually need an owner's manual for something, you're glad you have it. Or if you need legal advice, you're glad it can do that really quick.
Absolutely.
So small language models are going to help companies innovate faster, and they're going to have a better footprint, environmental footprint. Where AI is going to really affect people. One of the other takeaways that I had is with deepfakes, and we're going to do an entire episode on AI 101, everything you think you're supposed to know. We're going to do an entire episode on deepfakes, the idea that your likeness and voice can be replicated. But in short, I did a brand experience from a documentary filmmaker and a product called First Aid, but it's like AI'd. I don't know how to say it. And I went in a telephone booth. The phone rang. I answered a couple questions, and within 27 seconds, it had cloned my voice, and then it called me back, and it sounded very stressed and was asking for money, and it was fooling me.
Well, and this is the part that I think is so interesting, because we're at South by. You did that. You came home. You're like, put it in front of me. You're like, do it now, right?
Oh, the video version.
Yeah, the video version.
Yep.
And then we had this big discussion about like safe words, right? So because the thing that's happening right now is that people are getting scammed because their person, child, husband, wife, whatever, calls them and they're like, they're gonna kill me, give me money, and it works every time, right? And my threads, Greg, is blowing up with people this is happening to right now, and they use a safe word, and it was just over. You and I had never talked about this.
Never. So people need a family password.
Yes.
And so if so that way, if someone calls and you're like, I don't know if this is right, but like, it sure sounds like them, and they need help, and so I love them. I'm going to help them.
Yep.
And this isn't just boomers and their parents getting scammed right now.
Oh no.
And this isn't just people on Facebook Marketplace getting their phone numbers stolen. This is and if it took 27 seconds today, what I just told you, I said in 5 years from now, we're going to have home helper robots. So how many years until, and think about even us, how much of our likeness and voice is just on the internet.
Yeah.
And so, oops, we're doing it right now.
Right. Now we put face recognition.
Plus I just literally said the words like, I need money, help. So,
right.
So again, the short version for today is talk to your family, just be like, hey family, this exists. We need a family password. And, don't make it like your middle name or like your childhood dog's name. Like, just the basic things. And then we're going to do a whole episode on that one.
Yeah.
The other thing that you had shared, one of your biggest takeaways, was that technology anxiety isn't just for normals, it's also for the technology early adopters and the nerds at South by.
Yeah, I had the absolute privilege of getting into Esther Perel's live recording of her podcast, which was a top 10 life moment for me. Just anyone who knows me knows that I wax poetic about Esther Perel all the time, and her and couples therapy was a place that I really gained a lot of knowledge, not just about couples therapy, which I think is important, but also just about the nature of being human and relationships, and as relational beings, how that translates everywhere.
Yeah.
Right. And so when she was going to be at South by, originally I was less excited about less excited about it, just because, as Greg said, there's this whole fast pass system, which is express pass. See, I'm a Disney person, I'm using the wrong language, but there's this whole express pass system, and then if you don't have the express pass, you have to do the lines and all the things. And let me tell you, that is not my jam. The reason I love Disney is because you get the fast passes, you just walk in, and it has ruined me for lines forever. So I'm one of those jerk people that is if I don't have the fast pass, I'm not going, right? You and I sat on the floor to get into Amy Webb last year, and I will do that because you and I can hang out, and then you and I are talking about other things, and we're doing things, right? So it's not actually waiting, it's a thing, it's time for us to hang out, right? But I'm not gonna go do that by myself.
I like it. I make friends and then invite them to dinner.
Oh, great for you.
Okay, so that's the anxiety of going to the session.
Right. Yeah. So anyway, there was a whole thing before it was Amy Webb and Dr. Frederick, and Gustav, is that his last name? Anyway, I was just the guy that she was going to interview was the doctor that talks about longevity and what human happiness is. And I was more I should go see this. This would be good information for me to have. But it wasn't oh, I'm excited about this. And then right before, I don't know, the day before, I don't know when it happened, they figured out that doctor wasn't going to, there he is, Frederick Perft. I'm saying that wrong, probably.
Google's first informer.
Chief Innovation Evangelist. And he hates titles, so he probably hates that is what is on his bio.
There you go.
Anyway, that was the most ADHD thing that ever happened. So basically, I wasn't excited about it. Then it came out that she was going to have Amy Webb and Frederick on there. And I was and I knew intuitively just from being at South by, the vibe this year was very much do we really need robots or do we just need each other? Yeah. And there was this relational component that kept flowing through, after everyone talks about AI and how terrible it is, there was this we are still messed up from COVID. We still need to be in rooms with people. We need each other. Yeah. And it was it's, when I tell you it's at the top of everyone's throats, it was just this pervasive theme. The anxiety about this technology removing us from each other is everywhere.
Yeah, and I saw it too. Even that's why I went to a session about the more human side.
Yeah.
And they were so in their anxiety about being anti, they forgot to talk about the human side. And
so the amazing thing about this podcast reporting is that what happened is they were going to do this longevity panel, and then he had a family emergency and couldn't do it. And Esther, had sat at Amy Webb's panel,
Tech Trends
panel, and she came unglued, she said. And like, I'm using very dramatic language, but she was just like, her husband is a psychologist as well. And his expertise is on collective trauma. Mm-hmm. And so she called him after the panel, she said, and you can listen to it's a podcast episode. It's
not out yet, which we know because the guy just sitting next to me on the plane I, of course, made friends with.
Oh.
He's a producer for Vox.
Okay.
So he said it'll probably come out next week sometime.
Okay.
So we'll update the show notes with it when it's updated.
Yeah, but she said she sat in that panel and she was just like, how do we do this, actually?
Do what?
Continue to be humans with this just like the anxiety that she said she was holding in her body, listening to Amy. Yeah, Esther, listening to Amy's speech was like really profound to her. And so she brought together the Chief Innovation Officer at Google Labs, who is a huge proponent of not just innovation but creativity. And then Amy is not any of those things. She's a data analyst. Well, she's a data analyst. She's a futurist, but she is looking at the data and crunching it against more data and then figuring out where we're headed, and then she'll tell you.
And then she meets with governments and like the top of the Fortune 50 to give them future intelligence of this is coming, and then relies on them to decide what to do about it.
Yeah. So the title of the panel was Let's Talk About Our Future.
Correct.
Right? Like, let's talk about what is the future. And it was this really interesting dynamic of how do you create the future? What does the future mean? How does each individual decide what the future is? It was this a beautiful discussion with these very dichotomous viewpoints where we talked about what does it mean to be human in the face of this kind of technology, in the face of what's happening societally, and how do we continue to do good? How do we continue to be good? How do we continue to create space for the complexity of the human experience?
Yep.
And it's hard. It's very hard. And what Esther said that I was so impactful to me is she said, Amy, you stood in front of all of these people and you gave us all of these axioms and all of these things. And she goes, and you said it with a completely flat affect. And when you remove your affect, you hand it to other people to hold. And she goes, so I was sitting in the audience, and Esther's very like a vibrant human. And so she like literally went like this, right? She's like, and I just was like holding just like holding all the emotion that you just didn't have.
And what you didn't even know at the time when you were watching that is that how Amy started her whole thing was giving every single person in this like 1,500 person room a little wooden block, and she had them put it under their butts on their chair and sit on it the entire time as a literal metaphor of getting used to being uncomfortable.
Well, and the beauty of that, right, was Esther literally said that she was going to treat their dichotomous like viewpoints as a relationship, and she was going to like do couples therapy with them, which I delighted, and I thought that was so great. And what she, kind of pulled out from this was like this thing for Amy in her life as a human, that not the data analyst, but just Amy, the human, was that she determined that she is someone who deals with OCD. And so she said the way that, her kind of treatment or the way that she's kind of dealt with that is by being very, very deeply, she said, deeply comfortable with being uncomfortable, which if anybody wants to call me, like, let's figure out what those words mean, like, because those are very dichotomous, and like it's such an interesting thing to think about. What does it mean to be deeply comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And I have a lot of thoughts about that. That's not a cave project topic, but like, she just was like, this is what I do.
Sure.
This is what I do. And then
Yeah.
she talked about Herman Kahn and like his
Yeah.
kind of, you know,
Yeah.
why she labels herself a futurist and all of that stuff. And then, you know, there's this whole kind of tension between like, what do you do that's good for the version of you that is yourself, and what is good to do for the collective human good, and how do you kind of suss out like when to do what when. And you know, Frederick was very much just like, when you think about the future, you need to think about your happiness and your flourishing, and like talked a lot about how as humans, when we talk about the future version of ourselves, we aren't thinking of them as ourselves. Like, that's another person, right? And he goes, it's the number one reason why people don't save for their retirements, because they don't have any emotional connection to that future version of themselves.
Sure.
And so, you know, and Amy was just like, I vehemently disagree. And she goes, I sit in rooms every day with people who are making those decisions not based on the collective good, but on their own flourishing, and it's disastrous, and we're watching that play out in real time. So it was just a very interesting, and we didn't land anywhere. And we also like were, you know, they're having this discussion about like the ability to sit and hear differing viewpoints, and like there's just not a place that we do that anymore because of algorithmic perfection, which I thought was a really fantastic, and she's doing a whole conference, I don't know when it is, but about the crisis of the metaverse, and about how it's like this fracturing of self and fracturing of the collective and fracturing of all of these things has created this space where societally we're kind of in trouble at this point. But
so outside of that one panel, we're obviously seeing a lot of anxiety talk everywhere at our dinner, at the Minnesota Nice Party that we threw a 100-person party to, and like at Rohit Bhargava's panel, he had a whole thing around anticipated anxiety, and he had a takeaway that was the future. If we expect the future to be a disaster, we make that future.
Yeah. Which is a lot of the same thing that Frederick was talking about, right? Yeah.
At one of the stage that my agency put on, they had a panel where they were talking about how the antidote to anxiety is curiosity. I think between all these conversations, to me, this in 2025, South by Southwest was working to try to solve our collective anxiety through remembering the human side of technology, and maybe not hitting it. Maybe we're not ready. Maybe we can't because we're in it. And how fascinating when we fear the future, we focus more on the fear than the fact that we have control over so much of it right now.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that stuck with me that Frederick also said, he goes, we don't see the world as it is. Like, we see the world as we are. And that's like an Anais Nin quote. But like, and I'm saying that wrong probably too. But I think perception is reality in a lot of spaces. Yeah. And so I think also when you have an administration that like uses fear as a tool of communication, you know, not only are we imbibing it, we're talking about it constantly, it's pervasive, like it's kind of like a cancer, right? Like then everything is kind of sold through this lens of, oh shit, right? Instead of, well, what are we gonna do? Right? Like there's like this vibe change that's happening in the country as a whole, and we're seeing it like not just in our country but in others. Is like historically we 100% set the tone.
And this is a global conference with so many folks from Brazil and Asia. The and amount Europe.
I was one of a very small, like she asked when the whole thing started, raise your hand, and I like there was like very few Americans in that room.
Fascinating.
Which you and I, that is, we love that.
Oh, absolutely.
Dynamic. Like
Bring
put me in a room where I am not. Yeah, it was amazing.
So I think we should do, I'm going to just do like, if it's cool with you, just like quick hits of kind of a couple other key themes.
Yep.
Give you a closing thing, and then we should talk about like how to make a case if you want to try to go to South by next year. I think that obviously AI is something we're going to continue to talk about on the K Project, and how it's not just changing how we work and how we think. I think it's affecting I think that AI is redefining what it means to be human. And I actually got an email this week of someone challenging that thought, and we're going to meet next week because that's part of my process. Is like, I want to put that out there. I think that social media.
Wait, hold on. Can we talk about it or not? Or is it just like you just say it and then I just nod, or like what?
Oh yeah, that's definitely how this works.
Well, I don't know this. We didn't talk about this before now. So AI is changing what it means to be human. Is that because that is backwards? Right? And is that on purpose?
Yeah.
Okay, so can you talk about that?
So when you order an Uber or a Lyft to come pick you up, you open your app and you say, "Here I am, come get me," right? And a person driving a car has their app and it says, "Oh, come pick up Jenny Swan here." And they drive over and they pick you, and you get in and they say, "I have her." And then it says, "Now drive here." And you go, "Okay." And you drive where it is and you get out, and then it gives you digital money. Who's the robot?
Is this a cyborg thing? You're gonna like talk to me in soliloquy, and that's fine. But like, is that what you're getting at? Like, we're cyborgs now?
Essentially, that entire value exchange and process was run by an algorithm, and humans are acting it out. But that has very much changed what the human job is versus like a taxi cab dispatcher or someone knowing where the thing is.
So what you're saying is you're saying that because, okay. You're saying that because it's inflammatory. You're saying that to get a reaction. But the reality is, if we have robots doing all these things, it essentially makes us more human, right? Because we're getting distilled down to the actual goodness of who we are.
So with agents coming, and I know we need to further unpack what agents are, but imagine like you want to be able to pick up your phone and say, "Hey Siri, order me a pizza," and it just does it. And it's not because you've already set it up in Domino's and it knows all the things. It just figures it out, right?
Because it has a, yeah.
It's going to go do it for you. You're going to say,
yep,
"I need someone to pick up my dry cleaning next week," and it'll figure it all out for you.
Yep.
And that's going to come. How much free time does that free us up? And the fact that you and I are not farmers and having to like grow our own food, something that's very personal to us.
I was just going to say, you and I have a very specific idea of that is very real,
so
right? Which is like dads in the field for long hours. Like, yeah. So like we have a very real picture of that. But this is another kind of distillery moment that there was a lot of the, like in the panels that were talking about the good of AI that you and I got a lot out of. That was just like, and Frederick was, alluding to it too, like, and one of the scientists, he said, AI is the key to human flourishing.
So,
and I just like my brain, I love that sentiment so much. Whether it's true or not remains to be seen.
Well,
and I think it's important.
It's not neutral. It's
not neutral.
It's not good or bad. It is just like humans. It is both. It just depends, and it's not
right.
And so there's a lot more to unpack there, but I think that the opportunity to think about, similar to the Times Square TV in our living room right now, like what is the trade-off? How much agency are we willing to give up for what do we get back? And if what we can get back is more time where we're enfranchised, not disenfranchised, and where we can actually do good in the world, more good in the world, or be more human, awesome. Is that evident right now? No. Also, I think computers coming into the workforce or computers coming into life redefined what being human was. I think that social media completely redefined humans. In fact, the person I'm going to meet with to talk about this next week, the only reason we even know each other is from social. And so without social, we wouldn't even have this conversation, which is literally going to help me talk to you next time about it, because I'll have heard a different point of view, and maybe they'll do a better job of telling me why I'm wrong.
I love the idea of like we talk so much about capitalism and about cogs and like what are we doing in human productivity and all of this stuff. Like I love the idea that like there are tools and ways for us to step out of that productivity wheel and to step into a creative space.
Yeah.
Right. So I love that sentiment.
Yeah.
I think as in all things, like there's a human flushing.
Yep.
There's a big argument on the internet which word is right, but you know, it is. I know, but I like flushing. Like I like the idea of flushing.
Flush.
Yeah, because you like it's a very like you flush it.
Is
it's
it 'cause
gone.
of your accent?
It goes away.
Your Minnesota accent?
I don't. I'm from Iowa.
Oh,
so,
is that true?
Yeah, I don't have a Minnesota accent. It's fine.
So, quick hits. 2 more from me. So the first is fast, which is like the creator economy is not a fad. Oh my gosh, we've been seeing it exploding this year. 73 dedicated panels.
Yeah.
Just about creators and monetizing or creativity or building that, as well as the fact that all of these podcasts were being filmed there live because, again, as a South by Southwest advisory board member, like, it's a lock. Like, you know it's going to be a good discussion. You know they're not going to both agree with each other. You know they're going to pack a room because they have a fandom. Not that others that don't have that should, again, not have a chance, but wow. And also the brand activations. So all across Austin, these brands are building bespoke event experiences, and including we supported a couple where we're then bringing influencers there to share it. And I was quoted in Digiday this week saying, if someone comes through your activation and they don't share it on the internet, did they share it? Which it's no, by the way.
I think just like base level, it's an economy, right? It's an economy. 100%. It's how like a lot of us are knowing, or like, you know, it used to be 20 years ago, like every single Sunday you got the Sunday paper, and in the Sunday paper was the Target ad, and you would go through the Target ad and you would, Target. I just said it like the Target.
Again, your accent.
It's amazing. I'm really like settling into my Minnesota mom identity. Multiple facets. But anyway, that would be like, oh, this is what is cool, or this, and then you'd see the ads on TV, and then, you know, as we kind of progress in celebrity culture, and now we have a 24-hour ecosystem of like people. I would say this is more impactful because like I am choosing who I'm going to follow. I am choosing who's like outfit or branding or whatever they're promoting. Like I am choosing. It's kind of like that kind of inflection, you know, it's emotional point. It's the same thing that the Deepfake people are trying to do. Like, this is my choice. This is my person. This is and my friend. That was the other thing people said all the time. They're like, you know, when you listen to your podcast friends because they're your friends, but they're not really your friends.
And you talk that way?
I do all the time. I'm like, you know, my friend, right? And then we all laugh at each other, make fun of each other in the moment. But it's true. It's how our brains...
You're close to them.
Well, no, I am not close to them. I am a purveyor of the content they provide, and that content evokes emotion and connection to an idea. I'm not close to them because that's weird.
Okay, fine.
But like, there is a emotion, there's an exchange happening.
So for those folks that are like, well, you know, Mr. Beast disgusts me, and I don't like, you know, the Paul brothers, and like these, like, it's for kids or whatever. It's
well,
like,
what Kim Kardashian did this week, like, let's talk about that, because it's that.
Well,
like,
and I think, yeah, and like she vacillates between like influencer and creator, which is interesting. And
well,
I think,
I didn't realize there was a distinction. So,
oh, well, I guess we'll have to do our own.
That's weird. Like, now I'm annoyed. There's a difference between an influencer and a creator.
Like getting paid to do a post versus like coming in and like, this is what I do is I'm a creator, I make content, and then I might collaborate with a brand, but I'm going to do it in my own way.
I love that you think those things are different.
I love it too.
Adorable.
Okay,
that's adorable.
Last quick hit. So I did mention going to see Jay Graber, the CEO, who she started BlueSky.
Yes.
BlueSky is a short form social network, short form text, photos, and then during the session they turned on up to 3-minute videos, which is a very big deal. It is one of the platforms that has been proposed as an alternative and the replacement for Twitter, which is the wrong way of thinking about it. We shouldn't think AOL goes away and MySpace comes. MySpace goes away, or Facebook comes and MySpace goes away, and then the next thing comes and Facebook goes away.
Do you realize what you sound like when you say that?
What do I sound like?
That doesn't make any sense to a normal person.
Okay,
though.
so you have Facebook and Instagram and Pinterest and TikTok. Why did you make that face for Pinterest?
Because I don't use Pinterest anymore.
Perfect. You don't have to. That's what I'm talking about.
Walked right into it. Damn it. I hate that.
So, I will just say, BlueSky, it does feel a lot like Twitter, but it's based on the Fediverse. And the Fediverse is so confusing. And my takeaway is literally, the Fediverse is confusing, but almost everyone understands email.
These things don't make sense. And you've already pitched this to me twice, and I'm like, I don't understand. And maybe I'm just too dumb. Like, so, maybe this is...
At the very top level, we're not going to go deep, you guys, don't worry. The Fediverse is like a bunch of social media platforms that can talk to each other even though they're separate. So imagine that you could post on Facebook and see it on Pinterest. Okay? Or you have created all this content on Instagram and then it has a new ownership, or you don't like how it works. So you just take your content and go somewhere else. You don't have to save it down to your phone and report it somewhere. You own it. And so think about with email, you could be on Gmail and I could be on Yahoo, and we can email each other back and forth. We don't have to both have a Gmail account to email, right? So we understand you have work email. Your work email can talk to my Gmail, right? My work email.com and your.com, they can talk to each other. They don't all have to be on the same platform. It's email going back and forth. So what BlueSky has built is basically social that works like email.
I am glad that people are talking about this. I'm glad this is important to giant corporations and marketers and advertisers. But I'm just telling you, like, the normal person doesn't give a shit about any of this.
I love this.
And also, like, I'm tired of fucking hearing about the metaverse. I'm tired of the Fediverse, like, all of this stuff. Like, you're literally taking a beautiful concept and ostracizing people with it when you talk about things and don't explain it.
Okay, great. So corporations and brands do not understand this at all, like, to a deficit. And so where this is so exciting, it feels like a breath of fresh air. It feels like the earliest days of social. Just wait for those of us that are like living on that front edge.
Okay.
It feels like everything we loved about social media in 2007, which was like, it was exciting. You could find your tiny little niche of people that you could connect with and make friends and build content. And also that the platform owner, there's only 20 people that work at BlueSky. They have tens of millions of active users.
I'm following you. Yeah. Like, I agree. Also, you need to write a new narrative because we've already seen the end of that movie.
100%. And so that's
that's not exciting.
So what Jay and her team have built is where if we decide we don't like, so what happens with Twitter, right, is like they've killed moderation. They changed a lot of the policies. They made it a more dangerous place for certain communities, and so on BlueSky, if Jay does that, you can literally just take your whole community and all of your content and just move it to a different server and it's yours. And she's built it that way on purpose, which is fascinating. And also, I understand it's really technical and nerdy, and that seems hard.
Yeah, see, it doesn't. I don't understand that. You don't have a context for that.
Which is why I'm saying it's email. It's like literally email is as close as I can get to that. And in short.
And also, like, just from a practical perspective, like, the internet has not been safe yet.
Understood.
So, like, you have to, like, the lack of storytelling and ingenuity and innovation and storytelling is actually really troubling to me. Like, I'm just like, why can't you all explain this to normal people in a way, or why can't you do some sort of survey, like data security, safety, like moderation, like all of these things are very important. I keep hearing how BlueSky is doing it. Right, but just to be fair, you weren't aware that the CEO of BlueSky was a woman, even.
No.
So, like, there is just, like, this basic fundamental lack of understanding of what the consumer is asking for in their internet life, right? And this basic, like, disconnect between, like, oh, the corporations offer it, so we have to take it. Like, this mentality that's starting to shift.
Yeah.
That I think is just really interesting, and I don't have any...
We're going to get you on BlueSky. You get to try it out.
I am on BlueSky. I've been on BlueSky since, like, it was a thing because I knew the woman was a CEO. And originally, this is the thing that irritates me, just to be honest, about this whole BlueSky thing. Is like, this is a safe place. Like, there's content, Margaret. Like, women are safe here, right? And then she shows up at South by, and I'm just like, well, this is about dead, right? Like, so my, I am a normal, but I also like have you in my life, right? So like I'm a little less of a normal than most people. Even I'm like, fuck this. Like this isn't gonna be a thing much longer. And so I just think I think that social media is just really hard. And I think that like there's not a lot of trust. And I think that, like, a company like BlueSky could come in and do a really great thing if they told the narrative. And so sitting at a conference, like, wearing a shirt making fun of Mark Zuckerberg is fun, and it gets you hits in the paper. But it doesn't explain to your consumer what you're selling and what you're doing, and it doesn't innovate the space.
Yeah, I felt like
you're punching down or up at least, or at least, like, across, which I think is important, too. But, like... from a consumer perspective, and for a mom with kids who are going to be in the world, like...
Yeah. So, and what Jenny's talking about is Mark Zuckerberg always wears that shirt that has that, the text across it that says something about Hail Caesar or something.
I don't know. It's something Caesar.
And then her shirt said...
A world without
Caesars.
Yeah.
But that she didn't mention anything about any other platform except we've now turned on Flashes, which is a photo layer on BlueSky, which has basically replaced Instagram.
Yeah, ma'am, you need to explain to us why we need to be on BlueSky. Like, I don't give a shit about Flashes.
It's fascinating because I hear you, and I think maybe that's its own conversation on, like, we know all the reasons we would want to be on a place where we have more control over all the social.
Yeah.
And there are tens of millions of people there. The second there's hundreds of millions of people there, it's going to be hard again.
Oh, for sure.
And so a lot of communities right now are finding so much joy, in part because it's not huge. And what they're building, and I'm not saying BlueSky is it long term.
No, and I'm not mad at BlueSky. Yeah. And I honestly, I want her to do those things. I want her to wear that T-shirt. I want her to I want a person like that in the playing field, right?
Yep.
So I'm not trying to be I'm arguing about a theory of something, not about what's happening.
Well, and it's really one last thing. So she said, she had this quote about their algorithms, because everyone's like, oh, I hate algorithms. And she's like, don't forget, like, even chronological order is an algorithm. Like, what, and so you can actually... they have an open source database of algorithms, so you can go choose what algorithm you want. And so, like, if you just want to see posts and photos of cats, there's a cat algorithm that'll just surface that. So if you want to see something, you can write your own algorithm. And she said social media algorithms have often turned into high fructose corn syrup, but custom Fediverse feeds are like a farmer's market. You choose what you want to pick.
I vehemently disagree.
I know you would. So we're going to. I want to end with 4 other quotes that I heard from South by, including some from you.
Oh.
6 months from now, starting a search with Google will seem as antiquated as using a smartwatch.
Is that mine?
No.
Oh, okay. Because I heard one about the flip phone.
Okay.
So
nice.
Yeah.
Be open to sharing your point of view with others who don't agree with you. Don't replace the humans just because parts of their jobs can be automated.
That's interesting. Okay.
And in 5 years, pretty much everyone will own a little crypto.
They said that 5 years ago too.
I know.
We're all gonna have NFTs.
So that was South by Southwest overview at the hour and a half version.
Hour and a half.
And
damn, we didn't hit the mark at all, did we?
so that's South by Southwest.
That is South by Southwest. Yeah.
Are we going to try to go next year?
I assume so.
They are bulldozing the Austin Convention Center right now.
Yeah, I forgot about that until you just said it. Like it's so interesting because when we first started going, like that convention center and that whole downtown area was so profound to you and I. Little Iowa kids problems. But like just yeah, I feel like it's really whatever they're like what they're building is just so different than from what we've been experiencing the last ever year. And so I don't think it's necessarily like, oh, it's gonna be bad. It's just like it's gonna be so different.
Yeah, and I know I said earlier in the episode that we were going to share like how to make a case for you to go. And I think that if your job is touching marketing, creators, AI, influencers, or the philosophy of this, and you have an opportunity for your employer to help send you, let us know if that's something we can help you with, like building the case, figuring out how much it costs. Like that's a whole thing that you can do.
Yeah.
We're going to try to go. And we've said multiple years where like, if our employer didn't send us, it's still a really important place for us to try to go. Yeah.
And I think the more that you and I have gone, the more we've learned, like, you don't even necessarily have to like buy a full badge. A lot of people don't do badges at all. A lot of people that we have at our stranger dinners and that we interact with at activations, especially, like there's a whole ecosystem around just going to the activations just to see what the brands are doing, just to, if you're in this, your kind of industry, like there's a lot of ways to get the information you like really need. Like I would make the argument like South by is a touch point every year of like what's cool, right? And what's happening and
what's coming next. And you can be an active participant in helping shape what that is.
Yeah.
What kind of future do we want? Well, that's up to us.
Yeah.
Huh.
Exactly.
Well, thank you so much for listening. As always, you can follow us at the.cave.project on YouTube and Instagram. You can follow our Substack at The Cave Project.
Yeah.
And we would love to hear from you. Comments, emails,
all the
DMs, etc. Closing thought?
No. Well, I know. I think like the exploration of all of this is what makes us uniquely human. And so I think like the Cave Project's idea of technology not as neutral, but also not as something that you don't interact with is like really important.
Yeah. As always, that we're all learning and there's a lot to absorb and think about, and we don't have to be at the mercy of that thing. But hopefully we'll all still be here next year and the AIs won't have killed us.
You made it so far before you did that. I'm so proud of you, actually.